Let me ask you just one simple question. What means do you use to communicate with your relatives, friends, colleagues, spouses, or maybe partners over long distances? Today we live in an era of high technologies, and perhaps your answer would include cell phones, messaging apps, social media, or even emails. However, a century ago, the situation was entirely different. We could use postal mail or telephones, although they weren't quite accessible to everybody, or alternatively, we could use the telegraph, a device that allows messages to be sent electronically over wires. Today, I would like to talk about such a message that was sent in 1917 that reshaped the balance of forces in World War I and influenced the world as we know it today. Let's start from the historical context. On June 28, 1914, the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, Franz Ferdinand, was assassinated in Sarajevo by the Bosnian Serb nationalist Gavrilo Princip. This event became the catalyst for a sequence of actions that ultimately led to the outbreak of World War I. On July 28th, Austro-Hungary declared war on Serbia, igniting what would soon become one of the bloodiest conflicts in human history. Numerous countries became involved in the conflict, but initially there were two main factions or belligerent groups that waged the war. The Central Powers countries, such as the German Empire, Austro-Hungarian Empire, and Ottoman Empire, and the Allied countries, mainly including France, Russia, the British Empire, Belgium, Serbia, and Japan. The United States of America chose to remain neutral during the conflict. On August 19, 1914, the US President Woodrow Wilson declared that the country would remain neutral and urged Americans to remain impartial and refrain from taking sides in the war that was engulfing Europe. He also stated that the United States wouldn't get involved in any conflict unless its national interests were directly threatened. His speech clearly reflects the reasonable approach to the conflict that wasn't unfolding on his continent. The United States of America had neither any vital interests nor any direct threats posed that would push the country to enter the war. Instead, he favored the strategy of mediation. In August 1914, he appointed Colonel Edward M. House as his personal representative to participate in discussions with governments of the belligerent countries and to clarify under which conditions they would agree to conclude peace. However, as history would show, the warring countries were not interested in an early end to the war. Quite soon it became evident that the conflict wasn't destined to end quickly and the countries would need to wage a long-lasting, stalemate trench war. Both the Allied countries and the Central Powers began to experience shortage of resources, such as raw materials, munitions, food, or financial resources. And at this point, the importance of neutral countries capable of providing such resources suddenly increased. The United States of America emerged as one of the largest suppliers, trading with both factions when possible. And at first glance, it seemed that the current state of affairs could continue to exist, if not. On May 7, 1915, the RMS Lusitania British Ocean liner returning from New York to Liverpool was sunk by a German U-boat submarine. The ship sank during the so-called unrestricted submarine warfare ongoing, when Germany declared the waters around the British Isles a war zone in which Allied ships would be sunk even without warning. German officials claimed the liner was carrying a cargo of rifle ammunition and shells, therefore the attack was justified. Almost 1,200 people died, including 128 American citizens. On May 13th, the US President Woodrow Wilson sent a strongly worded note to the German government, demanding an end to German attacks against unarmed merchant ships. These precedents contributed to a shift in American public opinion against Germany. More and more Americans started to perceive Germany as an aggressor. Nevertheless, the attacks on passenger vessels continued. On March 24, 1916, a French passenger ferry Sussex was torpedoed by a German submarine, leaving almost 100 casualties, including several American citizens, wounded. In response to the sinking of the SS Sussex on April 19th, in his address to Congress, President Woodrow Wilson issued a stern warning to Germany, threatening to sever diplomatic relations unless Germany ended its policy of unrestricted submarine warfare. Wilson demanded that Germany respect the principle of international law and ensure the safety of civilian ships and passengers. Not wanting to escalate the situation, 2 weeks after the ultimatum, the German government issues the so-called Sussex Pledge. Under the Sussex Pledge, Germany agreed to modify its submarine warfare policy to reduce the risk of attacks on neutral shipping and passenger vessels. Specifically, Germany promised to provide prior warning and ensure the safety of civilian ships before attacking them. November 1916, the United States presidential elections. Woodrow Wilson is re-elected as the president of the country. His main political slogan, "To keep America out of war," significantly contributed to his victory. On January 22nd, he makes his Peace Without Victory speech, in which he outlined his vision for finding a peaceful resolution to the conflict, emphasizing the importance of finding just and lasting peace that would benefit all the parties involved. This is the moment we can introduce you to the author of the telegram that we will be discussing further. His name is Arthur Zimmermann. In 1917, he held the post of German Foreign Secretary. In January 1917, British Admiralty's code-breaking organization known as Room 40 intercepted a coded telegram sent by the Zimmermann to the German ambassador to Mexico. The telegram included two very important points that should have been communicated to Mexican authorities. The first was informing the Mexican government of Germany's intentions to begin unrestricted submarine warfare on February 1st, which of course would mean the abandoning of the Sussex Pledge. Germany intended to keep the USA neutral, but in case they failed, and here goes the second point, proposal for a Mexican-German alliance should the USA enter the war. The alliance would be based on the principle of mutual cooperation in wartime and peacetime, substantial financial assistance, and acknowledgement that Mexico is entitled to reclaim its former territories in Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. In other words, there was an offer to Mexico to enter the war and regain control of regions that Mexico had lost during the Mexican-American War from 1846 to 1848. The most important aspect was the way this message was delivered. The Germans were using the American State Department Atlantic cable system that the president allowed them to use when the British cut German cables once the war started. Woodrow Wilson was advocating for peace, therefore he considered that this gesture would help to maintain useful contacts between the USA and the European continent. The reason Zimmermann informed Mexico about unrestricted submarine warfare was that representatives from the German Navy convinced the military leadership and Kaiser Wilhelm II himself that a resumption of such policy could help defeat Great Britain within 5 months. Consequently, they believed that Britain would be defeated before the USA would be able to enter the war. The British planned to make the telegram an efficient tool for drawing American public opinion against Germany. And they managed to do so. When Germany abandoned the Sussex Pledge, German ships resumed the practice of attacking civilian vessels, including those flying the American flag. In response to the breaking of the Sussex Pledge, the United States severed diplomatic relations with Germany. This was an appropriate moment. The British government conveyed the initial message to US officials on February 24th, a month after they managed to decipher it. While certain American officials harbored suspicions that the telegram may be a British ploy aimed at provoking a declaration of war, President Woodrow Wilson regarded it as authentic. The copy of the telegram was leaked to the press, stirring considerable public anger against Germany. 1 month later, on April 2nd, the American president went before a joint session of Congress and requested a declaration of war against Germany. Among the reasons why the USA should enter the war, the American leader mentioned Germany's violation of its pledge to suspend unrestricted submarine warfare, as well as its attempt to make an alliance with Mexico that would pose a direct threat to US sovereignty. We can only guess whether the United States of America would have entered the war had the Zimmermann affair never occurred. However, it undoubtedly played a crucial role and turned the pacifistic American public opinion into true advocates for entering the war.